From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Stefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Today we start in Chile, where dozens of people have gathered in front of the presidential palace to hold a portrait of murdered Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca. This event was organized by the Traidores Mercenarios collective. Activists wore images of Catrillanca on their faces for around 40 minutes, in a protest that took place in complete silence. The murder of the young Mapuche by the National Police a week ago in southern Chile has led to a wave of protests and demands for justice.
For anyone who wants to participate, the event involves holding up a portrait of Camilo Catrillanca up to your face, in front of the presidential palace, and facing that way because we believe those responsible for his death are in there.
Chile's Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick will be called to Congress to answer questions about the Catrillanca's murder. With 61 votes in favor and 65 against, lawmakers approved a resolution which would allow questions to be posed to the minister. This is to take place during a lower house session on December 11th. The opposition says it hopes this will serve to publicly clarify the police's role in the murder of Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca. Our correspondent in Santiago, Tiare Valenzuela, brings us more details about this case.
On Wednesday, the National Police Chief went to Congress to answer questions made by human rights and Mapuche community commissions in regard to the timeline of events that led to the murder of Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca. This case has outraged political movements and the Chilean people. The Mapuche have held several demonstrations with the support of Chilean citizens. Many people have marched in different parts of Santiago and throughout the country, in particular where Mapuche communities are located. Tomorrow, there will be more demonstrations in Santiago to demand justice and to reject the ongoing state violence against the Mapuche people.
We thank Tiare for that report. A study by a non-profit organization has revealed that over 5 million Chileans live below the poverty line. These figures go against official government statistics that some argue try to hide the country's socioeconomic issues.
The Sol Foundation has challenged the government's claim of how many people live in poverty. According to its research, there are actually 4 million more than the official numbers say. In fact, over half of Chile's population earns less than $500 a month, in a country that has one of the highest costs of living in the region.
Nobody in Chile can manage to live on a minimum wage. Today, no one can live with a monthly average of 200,000 pesos.
The cost of living here is through the roof. Inflation is supposedly under control, but in reality, that's not true.
The Sol Foundation has laid bare the disparity between reality on the ground and what the government thinks to be the case.
The conclusion we have come to is that, taking into account salaries and the pension system, nearly 30% of the population lives under the poverty line, not just 8.6% as the government reports. That's an increase from a supposed 1.6 million people to over 5 million.
Among those millions, the most affected are senior citizens and the Mapuche people.
As a Mapuche, we are being used for a government program that has its whole charade written out. They say there is no discrimination, no violence, no stolen lands.
A government that is clearly out of touch can be the only way to describe how a country with the biggest GDP in Latin America has such high levels of inequality.
Moving on to Argentina, where on Wednesday night, police shot and killed a member of the Confederation of Workers of the Popular Economy. His name was Ronald Orellana. He was killed outside Buenos Aires during a police operation to evict a group of people who wanted to take over land to build houses. Witnesses say Orellana was shot in the mouth and the back. Others were injured by rubber bullets and 4 people were arrested. Students and teachers have faced off against the police in the Argentine capital as the Buenos Aires city legislature voted in favor of a controversial new university project. A strong police presence blocked the demonstrators from reaching the parliament building. They then used tear gas to break up the protest. 29 higher education colleges will will close to make a way for the UNICADA, leaving many teachers without a job. And still in Argentina, the Forum on Critical Thinking has entered its fourth day. The event is taking place just under a week before the G20 summit in that country. The theme of the event is fighting for equality, social justice, and democracy. During the four-day meeting, leaders are discussing social issues affecting the region. Telesur has been speaking exclusively with the various participants at the forum who have taken the stage. Among the topics discussed on Thursday were the ongoing attempts by the United States to assert dominance on Latin America, the rise of feminist movements, and the attacks of the right wing to these same movements.
The United States wants to recover what they call their own backyard. This will create many risks for Latin American countries. The policy of the U.S. is to divide and conquer. But the policy of Latin American countries should be to cooperate with other Latin American countries and not to be dependent on the U.S. A similar idea to what the UNASUR and CELAC represent.
There is hope. Hope in the feminist movement. As we have seen here in Glasgow, a movement represented by young people, there is hope in the movement of pensioners that are fighting for their pensions in various parts of Europe. There is hope in alternative philosophies that come from the indigenous peoples in all of Latin America, although we do have to be more organized. It's true that the resistance is a bit fragmented, but here we are and we will continue fighting.
There is really the danger of a reaction coming from the right that is going to attack especially women, or not especially women, but women in the first instance. If one looks at the propaganda, at the discourse, at the programs and so on, the first similarity that one can notice among all these right-wing formations is the attack on women's rights, particularly abortion, so sexual freedom, self-determination, and of course attacks on gay rights, on trans people.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he has authorized the use of lethal force by troops guarding the border against the migrant caravans. Speaking from Florida on Thanksgiving Day, Trump said he hoped such force would not be necessary. Earlier, a White House memorandum signed by Trump and published by Newsweek said there's evidence that the migrants may prompt incidents of violence and disorder.
Yes. If they have to, they're going to use lethal force. I've given the okay. Yeah, if they have to, I hope they don't have to. But you know, you're dealing with a minimum of 500 serious criminals. So I'm not going to let the military be taken advantage of. I have no choice. Do I want that to happen? Absolutely not. But you're dealing with rough people.
Trump also said that he would be prepared to see a government shutdown if Congress doesn't approve his requests to fund border security, including a wall.
Could happen, yeah, over border security. The wall is just a part of border security, a very important part, probably the most important part. But could there be a shutdown? There certainly could, and it will be about border security, of which the wall is a part.
However, the U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis already shut down media reports of military personnel on the Mexican border being ready to use force. He said that the Department of Homeland Security never made the request. The Defense Secretary also said that military police can only temporarily detain people at the border if necessary. Migrants staying at a shelter in Tijuana have reacted to the latest comments made by the U.S. president.
We don't think of it as a threat, we take it more as a joke, or something like that, because it is not Trump or anyone else who rules. God is the only one. If God wants it, we will cross. And if God doesn't want it, then we will not.
We got together and we will do what it takes to put pressure and cross. We can't stop it. Because if he tries to mess with one of us, he'll mess with the whole of Honduras, the whole of El Salvador, the whole of Guatemala, and the whole world is watching.
Despite the attempts at stopping them, and after almost 40 days since they left their homes, more migrants have arrived to Tijuana with the hope of starting a new life in the United States.
Nearly 40 days and 40 nights after they left their homeland, they arrived at the border city of Tijuana. They walked more than 4,000 kilometers to reach their destination.
When I realized we arrived to the border with Mexico and the U.S., I felt a relief.
Just a couple of steps away from the wall that divides Mexico and the United States, migrants have sought refuge. They've survived a journey that is yet to reach its end.
We are so close to the border, waiting for Trump to grant us permission to pass. We came here to look for a better future for our children, to work and have a new life. There are some people that have been in the city of San Diego for a week now, and desperation is starting to boil.
Crossing the border is crucial to improving the future of all those who they left behind at home.
I came to help my mother, who stayed in Honduras, to work and help her.
Displays of solidarity have been countless. However, the more than 3,000 migrants who now comprise the caravan have also been hard hit by xenophobia.
As we were walking here yesterday, a police officer said, "Get out of here, Hondurans." Then he cursed, but I didn't say anything bad. We are not here to disrespect them.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration insists that U.S. military forces have been deployed in anticipation of what he has described as an invasion.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Various social organizations in El Salvador have taken to the streets to demonstrate against water privatization. Their main goal is to demand that the National Assembly declare access to water as a human right. The demonstrators also visited the headquarters of various political parties, including Arena and Demócrata Cristiano, to demand laws that favor the environment. According to the UN, El Salvador has the highest level of environmental deterioration in the American continent after Haiti. The trial of Panama's former president, Ricardo Martinelli, is set to resume on Thursday after it was suspended due to his health. The former president is accused of wiretapping opposition members during his administration. His sons have also been arrested in the United States. U.S. authorities confirmed that they were accused of bribery in connection with the Odebrecht case. Our correspondent in Panama City, Hugo Vera, has more.
Panama Supreme Court suspended the hearing of the case against former President Ricardo Martinelli so he could be taken to the hospital for heart-related problems. Martinelli and his defense team say he's been suffering from ill health since returning to Panama to be tried for wiretapping members of the opposition during his administration. In June, he was hospitalized after the first hearing of his case and was supposedly diagnosed with arrhythmia. Since then, Martinelli has been falling sick during every hearing, with his defense team insisting he goes to a private hospital and that his rights are being violated. But after being treated on Wednesday, the court announced hearings will resume on Thursday afternoon, which are still in evidence-presenting stage. Critics say this is due to flaws in the judicial system and a tactical defense team who want to stall the trial. Another criticism of the trial is the alleged backdoor negotiations with the victims of his crimes. Martinelli has reportedly offered each of them $75,000 to stand down as witnesses. He's considering running for mayor of Panama City and as a representative in the lower house for his party. On trial for espionage, yet still eligible to take part in elections and regain political power.
We thank Hugo Vera for that report. At least 6 people have been killed in Haiti when a government vehicle lost control and ran over a group of protesters. The vehicle was later set on fire by other protesters. This incident occurred on the 4th consecutive day of a general strike. Demonstrators want President Jovenel Moïse to resign for not investigating corruption allegations. And the Haitian president has urged his political rivals to respect democracy after 4 days of violence and protests calling for his resignation. In a televised address, Jovenel Moïse appealed for calm and demanded that the will of the people who elected him as president in 2017 be respected. He also called for an all-inclusive dialogue. His statement comes after Sunday's demonstrations, followed by a general strike that has paralyzed the country. The first group of Cuban doctors from the More Doctors program in Brazil are expected to arrive to the island on Friday. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel took to Twitter to welcome the doctors. He said, "We honor these men and women that made history in Brazil. Welcome home." Cuba decided to pull out of the program last week after insulting remarks by Brazil's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro. A new alternative route for 3 miles in St. Andrew, Jamaica is near completion. Costing $1 million, the road will link Chesterfield Drive off Spanish Town Road to Marcos Garvey Drive, easing traffic. The new road will allow commuters to reach their destinations easier without the need for diversions. A former soldier has been sentenced in Guatemala to over 5,000 years in prison for his role in a massacre during the country's civil war. Santos Lopez was a member of a U.S.-trained counterinsurgency force. He was sentenced to 30 years for each of the 171 killings committed during the war. He received an additional 30 years linked to the killing of a child. Brazil Landless Workers Movement, or MST, has submitted dozens of documents for a public hearing at the Legislative Assembly of the state of Minas Gerais. This is an attempt to stop the Brazilian government from evicting 450 families from a settlement called Quilombo Campo Grande. In March of this year, the settlement's residents received eviction notices. Social organizations in Bolivia are throwing their support behind President Evo Morales and Vice President Álvaro García Linera as they seek to be re-elected in 2019's general elections.
Bolivian Workers' Union announced its decision following a national assembly.
We want to strengthen the candidacy of Evo Morales. He's the best candidate and leader for the 2019 general elections. We're also throwing our support behind our friend Álvaro García Linera, the vice presidential candidate seeking re-election.
Social organization, campesinos, and indigenous groups, all part of the National Council for Change, wasted little time in demonstrating their support for Morales and his vice president. They're standing in solidarity with the union as they back the government.
We, the campesino movement, have opted to have a political wing so we can't be joined to another political party. That is why the Bolivian Workers' Union also has taken that decision.
García Linera had initially announced that he would not be seeking re-election, but it was President Evo Morales who requested that social organizations ensure that the vice president's decision is reviewed.
It's the decision of the Bolivian Workers' Union. The most important organization of the working class has reached this decision.
Meanwhile, President Morales called on social movements to discuss and come up with ideas that would help to secure the country's political future.
This is going to be historic. I don't believe there's any other country in the world where the worker sector has come together to organize, discuss, evaluate, and come together to participate in democratic elections.
These organizations are a kind of extended social cabinet for the government. General elections will be held at the end of next year, but right now the country is immersed in an early electoral campaign for primary elections.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa recently launched a new political party, the Socialist Workers' Revolutionary Party. Earlier, we spoke with NUMSA spokesperson about the new party.
Well, one of the key lessons that we've learned as NUMSA, as having worked as part of the ANC alliance, is that it is impossible for the working class to achieve genuine equality and freedom when they make compromises with capital. And our alliance within the ANC was in effect a compromise with capital, because the ANC has been pursuing very, very narrow neoliberal macroeconomic policies.
Zimbabwe's finance minister has presented the country's 2019 budget during a session of parliament. But this was overshadowed by what was happening in the stands. Police forcibly ejected opposition lawmakers for refusing to stand up when President Emerson Mnangagwa walked in. The 2019 budget presentation comes amid deepening economic woes, characterized by a shortage of basic commodities and hard currency. The Islamic University of Gaza is offering vocational training courses to young Palestinians with disabilities sustained during the Great March of Return protests. Participants train for 4 months in different specialties, including carpentry, programming, and maintenance of smart technologies. Among others, the program aims to help them find employment despite their disabilities so they can contribute to society.
The project targets those injured during the March of Return demonstrations. The project started at the beginning of August 2018. It targeted the injured that have become handicapped.
They told us that there were professional courses for the wounded, and I wanted to participate in them. And thank God, I chose the specialization of the maintenance of mobiles. I loved this field before, and I could learn it after my injury. Thank God.
The United Kingdom and the European Union have agreed on a draft political declaration that sets out the terms of a post-Brexit relationship. The European Council President says the EU executive informed him the text has been agreed on principle and that the leaders of the 27 remaining EU states will debate the text at a meeting in Brussels. The declaration states that the transition period could be extended by up to 2 years. Prime Minister Theresa May is said to make an emergency statement in Parliament.
Throughout these difficult and complex negotiations with the European Union, I have had one goal in mind: to honour the vote of the British people and deliver a good Brexit deal. Last week we achieved a decisive breakthrough when we agreed with the European Commission the terms for our smooth and orderly exit from the EU. Alongside that withdrawal agreement, we published an outline political declaration setting out the framework for our future relationship. Last night in Brussels, I had a good detailed discussion with President Juncker, in which I set out what was needed in that political declaration to deliver for the United Kingdom. We tasked our negotiating teams to continue working overnight, and as a result, the text of that declaration has been agreed between the European Union and the United Kingdom.
And now it's time to bring you more stories from around the world.
Public hospital workers have clashed with police outside the Ministry of Finance in Greece's capital Athens as they protested against the 2019 budget. Workers are demanding more funds for the healthcare sector after claims the government has not invested in it for some time.
Expenditure of public health remains stagnant. Total budget for health sector next year will be 1.5 billion euro. The government that says that bailout has finally ended has not found a single euro for public hospitals.
It's Lebanon's 75th anniversary of independence from French colonial rule, so it's celebrated with a military parade in Beirut. In attendance were President Michael Ayoun, the parliament speaker, and Prime Minister. The French mandate began in 1923, leading to the partition of Lebanon from Syria. 6 Yemenis have been killed and dozens injured, including women and children, in raids carried out by the Saudi-led forces in Sada. A populated farm was targeted, leading to widespread damage and material losses. The wounded were taken to hospital.
The Anne Frank House Museum has reopened in the Netherlands after being renovated. It's been updated to receive a new generation of visitors whose grandparents were born after World War II. 1.2 million people visit the museum each year, which is a tiny apartment where Anne wrote her famous diary. Her and her family's story is told through photos, quotes from her diary, an audio tour, and video testimonies of Holocaust survivors. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.